tumultuous sea stood an old lighthouse, abandoned for decades. It had stood silent and empty, its lantern long extinguished, its beams of hope turned off for the world, its existence now a mere footnote in the town's history. But to the curious and adventurous, the lighthouse remained a source of intrigue and mystery. The locals spoke in hushed tones about the lighthouse keeper, a man named Thomas, who had mysteriously vanished without a trace one stormy night decades ago. Legend had it that he had been driven mad by the relentless crashing of the waves and the haunting cries of the gulls, or perhaps he'd been taken by the very sea he'd dedicated his life to guarding. Some whispered that he'd become one with the waves, while others claimed he'd fallen victim to the spirits that haunted these shores. In the heart of town, nestled between a quaint bookshop and a bustling tavern, sat Sarah, a young woman with a thirst for adventure and a heart full of courage. She'd always been drawn to the sea and its mysteries, spending countless hours exploring the rocky coastline near her home. But it was the old, abandoned lighthouse that captivated her imagination the most. Its crumbling stone walls and overgrown windows held secrets that she yearned to uncover. As days turned into weeks, her thoughts of the lighthouse only intensified. She could still hear the mournful cry of the gulls and the constant roar of the waves, even when she closed her eyes. One day, driven by an insatiable curiosity, she decided to venture out to the lighthouse and unravel its mysteries. With a knapsack filled with supplies and a heart filled with anticipation, Sarah set off on her journey to the lighthouse. The path was treacherous, but her determination only grew stronger with every step she took closer to her destination. Upon reaching the lighthouse, Sarah found it just as she had imagined it, weathered and worn by the relentless sea winds. Its once bright and welcoming beacon had been extinguished for years, leaving it shrouded in an eerie silence. With a deep breath, she pushed open the heavy wooden door, bracing herself for whatever awaited her inside. The moment she stepped inside, the air grew noticeably colder, sending a shiver down her spine. The floorboards creaked ominously beneath her weight, and the smell of dampness and decay filled her nostrils. Each step echoed through the cavernous space, amplifying the silence. As she ventured deeper into the lighthouse, the darkness seemed to close in around her, making it impossible to see anything beyond the reach of her flashlight beam. As she continued her exploration, the darkness seemed to press in on her, suffocating her with its heavy presence. Suddenly, a faint scratching sound reached her ears, sending her heart racing. She froze, listening intently, but the sound did not repeat itself. Perhaps it had been a figment of her imagination, brought on by the oppressive darkness and the isolation of the place. Determined to push on, Sarah moved forward, her senses on high alert. As she ascended the spiral staircase, the shadows seemed to writhe and twist, taking on shapes that made her imagination run wild. The stairs groaned under her weight, and with each step she could feel the weight of the lighthouse's history pressing down on her. At the top of the stairs, she found herself in a small room with a single window that offered a breathtaking view of the raging sea. Through the glass, she could see the waves crashing against the rocks below, their white crests illuminated by the pale moonlight. But it was what she found next that made her blood run cold. In the centre of the room was a heavy wooden chest, its surface adorned with intricate carvings. As she approached, she noticed that the carvings depicted scenes of ships battling through storms and ghostly figures reaching out from the depths. With trembling hands, she reached for the latch, her heart pounding in her chest. As the lid creaked open, Sarah gasped. Inside lay a collection of items that seemed to tell the story of the lighthouse keeper. There were personal belongings, like a tattered journal and a worn leather wallet, as well as mysterious objects, like a tarnished silver locket and a strange pendant carved in the shape of a sea creature. Among the items in the chest, there was a tarnished silver locket. Curiosity overcame her, and she carefully opened it. Inside, she found a faded photograph of a man who she assumed was the lighthouse keeper, Thomas. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile, and his presence seemed to linger in the faded image. Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of connection to him, as if their paths had been intertwined by fate. As Sarah delved deeper into the lighthouse keeper's belongings, she came across a weathered leather-bound journal. Its pages, brittle with age, contained entries written in a flowing script that hinted at the lighthouse keeper's thoughts, fears, and experiences. The journal became her window into his world, allowing her to witness the torment he endured during his final days. One entry in particular stood out. Written in a shaky hand, it spoke of strange occurrences that had been happening in the lighthouse. Thomas wrote of hearing voices that seemed to come from the sea itself, calling out to him in the dead of night. He described feeling a cold presence within the lighthouse, as if he were not alone. These entries sent shivers down Sarah's spine, painting a picture of a man on the brink of despair. But amidst the darkness, there was a glimmer of hope. In another entry, Thomas spoke of a small chamber hidden within the lighthouse, a place where he felt a sense of peace and solace. According to his journal, this secret room was accessible only by following a series of cryptic clues, and it held the key to understanding the lighthouse's haunting past. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Sarah set out to find the hidden room. She retraced Thomas's steps, examining every inch of the lighthouse, determined to uncover the secret he had shared in his journal. As she searched, she noticed subtle details that hinted at the room's existence, such as a faint draught and the sound of distant whispering. Suddenly, while examining the lighthouse's intricate carvings, she noticed a small indentation that was not there before. It was barely noticeable, but something about it seemed significant. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Sarah pressed her fingers into the indentation. To her surprise, the wall behind it slid open, revealing a narrow passageway. As she stepped into the passage, the cool air from within sent goosebumps prickling across her skin. The space was narrow and dimly lit, forcing her to move with caution. The air was heavy with the scent of salt and decay, and the sound of rushing water echoed in her ears. The passage twisted and turned, leading her deeper and deeper into the lighthouse, and finally she emerged into a small, unassuming room. Inside the room, sunlight streamed through a small window, illuminating a collection of strange and mysterious items. There were nautical maps and charts, some dating back centuries, with markings and annotations in Thomas's familiar handwriting. Among the maps, she found a small, intricately carved box. Its surface was adorned with images of waves, ships, and mythical sea creatures. With trembling hands, she opened the box, revealing a collection of tiny glass bottles filled with a swirling, ethereal substance that seemed to glow faintly from within. As she examined the bottles, she noticed that each one contained a whisper that seemed to move and shift within the glass. They were like tiny fragments of memories, each holding a piece of the lighthouse's haunting past. Just then, the room began to hum with an otherworldly energy, and the lighthouse lamp flickered on, casting a pale, ethereal glow. Startled, Sarah turned and saw a shadowy figure waving frantically toward the wall. She followed his gaze and noticed a door that had not been there before. With a mix of fear and fascination, she approached the door and reached out to touch it. As her fingers brushed against the cool surface, it swung open, revealing a staircase that spiraled downward into darkness. Taking a deep breath to calm her nerves, Sarah descended the stairs, each step echoing in the sudden silence. At the bottom, she found herself in a small, musty chamber. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the flickering lamp cast long, dancing shadows on the walls. In the centre of the room was a large stone altar, and on it lay a collection of strange and unsettling items. There were tarnished silver instruments, strange symbols and diagrams etched into the stone floor, and most disturbing of all, there were dozens of small skulls that seemed to stare back at her with empty sockets. As Sarah cautiously approached the altar, she noticed a small opening in its base. With trembling hands, she reached inside and pulled out a weathered piece of parchment. Unfurling it slowly, she found that it was covered in indecipherable symbols and strange, archaic writing. Then suddenly, as if guided by an unseen force, Sarah reached out to touch one of the skulls. In that instant, the room was filled with a blinding light, and the lighthouse shook violently, as if in protest. When her vision cleared, she realized that the skull had vanished, leaving behind only a faint outline in the dust. And then they began to chant in unison, their voices rising and falling like the waves of the sea. "Stay with us forever, Sarah. Stay." Their words echoed around her, growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. "Stay, stay, forever." Terror surged through her as she realized the terrifying truth. The lighthouse wasn't abandoned. It had been waiting for someone to join the voices, trapped between the living and the lost, and now they wanted her to stay with them forever. The chanting grew louder, and the shadows around her began to close in, enveloping her in their icy grip. As the storm raged outside, the lamp's light revealed the cliff once more, empty and desolate. The townspeople would later wonder why the lighthouse keeper's journal had returned to the shore, washed up by the tide, with a new entry dated that very day, written in a handwriting that was not Thomas's.